Morning all. I'd like to show you a really interesting game this morning between Gata Kamsky and Vladimir Kramnik, played in the World Championship Candidates match of 1994. Kamsky, if you don't know, he took a break from chess after he was defeated by Nc3 Qb5 in 1996, and he's returned years later, and he's still a very strong 2700 GM now. So this game features a very interesting opening which some would regard as the Botvinnik system. Gata playing white, kicked off with d4. The Botvinnik system, I'll qualify that against the Slav, in the Slav defense. So there was a classic game predating this in 1945, a fascinating USA versus USSR radio match where Arnold Denker was playing white for the USA against Mikhail Botvinnik playing black, and all of these moves were played way back in 1945 with this Slav triangle and this very sharp move bishop g5 being used here after d takes c4. This is a very sharp line researched by Mikhail Botvinnik, and he really crushed Arnold Denker, and in fact maybe we should do a video on that game as well. It's a very sharp line. After e4 b5, black is inviting the exploitation of this pin now. h6, bishop h4. After g5, white is sacrificing the knight here, knowing that he's going to get a knight back. After knight bd7, e takes f6, bishop b7. All of this being played in 1945. Now, Arnold Denker not really familiar with the system that much. He really had a passive position after bishop e2. He played bishop e2. Later, basically, Mikhail was able to use that h-file, castle queenside, strike out with c5 later, I think maybe supporting b5 first, and it was really horrendous. White's position very quickly lost after bishop e2. The more modern treatment is on this 12th move now, and now we're going to the Gata Kamsky Vladimir Kramnik game of 1994. It's not all bad for white, and a very interesting move researched g3, which seems to be in one way a little bit silly because this diagonal has got a bishop pointing down on it. And what about the c5 move? Okay, and indeed c5 is played, and the idea is to play d5 here, not being really concerned about b4 in this position. I think maybe just d takes e and it starts to get very dangerous, but actually we'll do a technical check on that just for those interested in the second part of this game. A lot of theory in this position, very sharp dynamic battles, and quite a few brilliancy games have resulted from this very sharp opening position. Black still trying to castle queenside. Obviously, with the kingside like this and the pawn on f6, it's not usually a good idea in general to castle kingside into that. So queen b6, supporting b5, making way to castle queenside. Bishop g2, now black castles queenside, and white castles kingside. With this fianchetto, it's more solid than the old Arnold Denker treatment. The h-file dynamism is not so bad, h2 is not so bad, this fortified triangle and this defensive bishop on g2. We see in this game now, at move 15, Vladimir trying the move b4, and I believe this has been played many times. Knight a4, queen b5. Very heavy theory in this line. a3, white trying to peel open that a-file. We see now knight e5. Okay, we should really do a reference check, and I'm thinking of doing one right now, not waiting for the second pass. We still have on my local database 15 games here where the top move is a3 takes b4. Just to make sure about knight e5, is that an unusual move in this position? Knight e5. The most usual move apparently is taking on d5. Carlsen, Shirov, Shaporonov, PK have played that. Taking on d5 with the pawn. Knight d7 to b8, 63 games. 95 rarer, not 15 games. So the top move played 113 games on my database is E takes D. Okay, so it does venture out a little bit to play knight E5, and I wanted to emphasize that now because it seems white gets an opportunity to do something quite interesting now. He takes on B4, and black doesn't really want to play queen takes B4. It keeps this bishop locked behind its own pawn. Pawns are still doubled. So he takes C takes B4. Slight weakness of this last move is that the D4 square is no longer covered. This D4 square here. And that's used now with Gata's next move, Queen D4. So no bishop C5 for black as well, preventing bishop C5, eyeing the A7 pawn. Seems like a very logical move. But what about this next move, which seems to want to evict the queen and defend the pawn and gain time in various ways? Knight C6, using that pin apparently on the pawn. And there's also, of course, here, but you know, what about these two? So the main thing is this pin on the queen. Now if that queen did move, then maybe even an exchange sack with rook d5 would be logically justified, and we'll check in the second pass if the queen moves here. Okay, can't take on a7, the knight's protecting a7, but I wonder if you can spot what white played in this position if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, a forcing move, offering the queen. D takes c6, so a queen sack for 2 pieces. So what's going on here? But it's also a very advanced pawn on b7. So rook takes d4, c takes b7 check. Vladimir plays king c7. Okay. Now with king c7, he knows at the moment there's the defensive resources on this diagonal, otherwise that queening of the pawn is unpleasant. So bishop f4 could at least be answered with, for example, e5, bishop d6, or even rook f4. So there's no problem at the moment. But what Gata plays in this position is not bishop f4, but actually bishop e3 now. And his idea, if the rook moves, is to take on a7 and then threaten b8 like this. Okay. So can that rook move, or can it be defended? We'll have to check out bishop c5 in the second pass of this game, for example. But in the game, actually, the rook was supported with e5. And now, in order to try and achieve bishop a7, another quite an impressive looking move is played here. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 10 seconds now. Okay, white plays knight c3. He really wants this rook to get out of the way so he can play bishop takes a7 and b8. Very dynamic play from white. Nice queen sack for 2 pieces, advanced pawn. Okay, what if the queen moves here? Is that dangerous? Well, with this knight retreat, the rook's now also eyeing a7, so it starts to be a bit dangerous. On queen b6, then maybe knight d5 check, and if rook takes, then bishop takes b6. So the queen can't step to b6 because of knight d5, it would seem, at least. That looks like a very good move. So on queen c5, well, these are definitely things to check for the second pass here, if the queen could have moved somewhere. But okay, in the game the knight was just taken, and after b takes, now the rook is refusing to budge, just left there with bishop c5. Okay, now c takes d4, bishop takes d4. Okay, materially, what is going on in this moment of the game? Let's give the queen 9 the rook 14, 17, so 17 units, say 5 for rook, 10, 13, 16. White's slightly behind, but this advanced pawn is also pretty dangerous, so not doing too badly. This rook being attacked at the moment, but white attacks the queen. Queen c5 is played. Okay, reinforcing that protection of a7. And now another clever move from white. Can you spot this next move if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay, white plays rook a6. And the intention seems to be rook c6 check to win that queen. Or is it? Very complex tactical position here. Okay, if that is a threat of rook c6, it's actually ignored here, but we really need to check this in the second pass. Black actually plays, instead of, also bishop takes e3 is very tempting as well, but actually black just plays rook b8 here. Now white's not desperate to win the queen with rook c6, it's 2 pieces back, and then b7 will surely drop if you play rook c6 here. So this next move shows a quite different intention altogether now of this rook a6, and it's a very, very clever move. I wonder if you can spot it. So it's making use of this rook on this rank. That's the clue. Otherwise you might never get it, but you might want to pause the video and try and get it if I give you 10 seconds to do so now. Okay, very dynamic play from white. White's very calm about this. He plays bishop c1. Bishop c1. So not only offering f2, but the bishop is coming to this diagonal where bishop d6 is going to be really annoying. And where would the queen go? There's a crossfire of these bishops, so the queen actually hasn't got too many squares to go to potentially either. Vladimir tries c3 and we see bishop a3. And in this position again you might think there's various possibilities, for example c2, which we need to check out in the second pass, but actually Vladimir perhaps thought that wasn't very good. Maybe, for example, the rook can just simply move there to c1, keeping this horrendous threat on the queen, which is difficult to parry. The queen doesn't want to go to c4 particularly, but okay. As it turned out, in this position, forget c2, the queen does go to c4, inviting this seemingly really dangerous check. Okay, so what's going on here after king d7? Can white just take on b8? Well, actually white plays something different here. Not too tempted by material just yet. White plays bishop c6 check, and the king is getting to be in an unfortunate place. Doesn't really want to be on this back row. Perhaps he plays king e6, and now bishop b5 attacking the queen, and it's starting to look horrendous. Where can the queen actually go? And this discovered check from the rook is going to happen. c2 is now too slow. Bishop takes his check. So this spells real trouble for black. Vladimir tries bishop takes f2. Okay, white takes that, allowing a breather from black with this check. But what can black do now? He's starting to be material down. He tries queen e4, attacking the rook. That rook moves to e1, attacking the queen. We see queen h1 check, king f2, queen takes h2, king f3, keeping guard of g3. Black is finally able at least to take that b7 pawn, but now we see bishop takes e5, which is check from the rook. Rook b6, bishop c4 check. After king d7, rook takes a7 check. White's pieces are coordinating very, very well. After king c8, well, if he goes king c6, it would seem rook c7 is mate. So rook, after king c8 though, rook c7 check. Black's had enough here. He feels his position is completely lost and resigns. This is definitely one for a second pass to see all the possibilities. Let's see, even in this final position, okay, it should be clear enough here, but let's have a look where black resigned. If king b8, okay, this is a mate, forced mate, rook c5 check, rook takes c6. White's got a huge material advantage here, and if black has to do queen a2, it's not very nice. So let's just give an example. The checks could run out here, for example, leaving a mate in 4 like this as an example. Yeah, white's material advantage is really telling here. So let's go back, and so all of this is classic beaten territory, stemming back from the golden age of radio. They were celebrating radio technology back in 1945. So the USA versus USSR radio match. All of these moves heavily researched by Botvinnik. And key move nowadays, in fact, let's do a reference check. I believe G3 is the top move in this position. 409 games. The old Arnold Denker move, still quite a few games, 110. So we're talking about 1/8 of the games compared to G3. At least 1/8 might be with bishop e2. So not so bad. Other moves not so popular. Queen f3, 37 games. h4, 16 games. a4, 12 games. So really the top move is G3 here. And then what we saw was c5. And is c5 the top move? Yes, 611 games. Second is queen b6. So trying to exploit that diagonal. d5. And so why is the top move queen b6? 256 games. Second move, 122. Knight d7 takes f6. I think b4 is just a disaster. But let's just check it out of interest. What does the engine in fact think? And what's the theory on it? The engine has a move which is much better than d takes e6, it seems. What's going on here? For those of you interested in the theory of this, let's have a look. Bishop takes c4. Okay, now if it takes, d takes e6 here is now threatening mate. What does black do here? And what if f takes in this position? Okay. The reference track has this game of Szabo losing with black, by the way, in 1993, with the move f7 check. But even stronger than what Kopshonkin played against Szabo would seem to be queen g4. But f7 is just winning the queen, so that's fairly clear cut as well. So that is a disaster. So for those of you interested in the move b4, why isn't b4 played? There's your answer. Bishop takes c4. So that's pretty horrendous here to play that. And in fact, someone did win as black, and it was a very low rated game. No, but bishop takes c4. No, there's just 3 wins in this line with bishop c4 in my database. Horrendous. Fascinatingly, maybe queen c7 is a tactical idea. Takes. This is in a World's Duro game. Check. White played king f1. but maybe there's even stronger here, as the engine mentioned. On king f1, maybe white's still got big advantage anyway. Okay, so that's a nightmare. Okay, if you're wondering about this line, so forget b4. Queen b6 is the most popular move. Bishop g2. Let's go back to reference check. Black casting queenside, the most popular. White casting kingside. Now the move b4 is the most popular move. It's all been played before, over 500 games just on my local database here. All been played before. Queen b5. In this position, again, highly theoretical. a3 is the top move with 197 games on my database. D takes e6, 45 games. So a3. And the most popular, as I mentioned in the first class, because of the importance of the position, is actually e6 takes d5 here, scoring 60%. Okay, so knight e5 was played here instead. Slightly unusual, because we have knight to b8, 63 games, knight e5 only 15 games. And okay, so Kramnik's tried this knight e5, and it may be the game can be considered a refutation in a way, almost a positional sacrifice refutation of this move. Because if you consider a takes b4, if black really does play queen takes b4, isn't that just horrendous? Let's just check this. It seems to be +3 for white. Queen e2, it's not what black's intention was. Knight d3, d takes e6, bishop takes g2, let's go with this, king takes, f takes, check, f7 here on the rook, knight c3, with these double pawns. Basically this bishop's hemmed in. Positionally it's a nightmare. Check, let's just demonstrate, taking a pawn. Black's just fallen to bits, hasn't got any dynamism. So really the idea is to have dynamism, so c takes b4. So we see the move queen d4, and the engine at a certain depth thinks knight c6, like Vladimir might have thought, is an interesting move, and maybe even just a prelude to a repetition like knight c6, queen d2, knight e5 again. Because what is actually black threatening in this position? Let's have a quick examination of threat analysis. Black's threatening bishop takes d5, it would seem, where the knight's very useful for the f3 square. Okay, so this move attacking the knight, attacking a7. In this position, is rook takes d5 good enough? Queen takes a7, not really, it seems. Now bishop e3, let's go with bishop e3 here, or is there a better move? Yes, knight b6 check, and it starts to get really dangerous. This looks very dangerous for the black king here. There's various moves, so rook a5 looks pretty dangerous. Okay, so black doesn't want to go into this stuff. He doesn't want to play rook d5, and perhaps not bishop takes d5 either, because of queen a7 again, or not. Hold on a sec. No, queen takes e5 here. Simple. So rook d5 is holding the knight. It's the only other idea, and it's not very good. So knight c6, we have a situation here where let's ask the engine: is this queen sack calculatable to an advantage to white? At the moment, it's not even considered. D takes c6. Intuitively, it seems. To be honest, it's extending the scope of the bishop. It's getting a nice advanced pawn on b7. It's two pieces. for the queen, but it's not been mentioned here at depth 19. Depth 20 we just see queen d1 or queen d2. Fascinating. Queen d1 or queen d2. Still, at depth 20, queen d1 or queen d2. Sometimes we can make things easier for our engines by suggesting the move and forcing them to look at it. So, by forcing the engine now to look at this move, d takes, it looks as though black's still doing really well. So let's go into this position and force look at this. Okay, now it appears to be a major branch here. That king b8 might be seemingly stronger than king c7. In fact, the engine likes white initially with king c7. Could this be potentially an inaccuracy of the game? Let's have a look at king b8. So this position, let's try similar to the game, bishop e3, e5. So in the game we had knight c3. Would this work at all well here? This same principle of ganging up on a7. Let's go with this, bit analogous to the game. There's a key difference here, clearly. So bishop c5, in the game we would have played c takes d4 here. Bishop takes here. So a parallel universe to the game with the king on b8 in this position. Is rook a6 hopeless here? On rook a6, it is hopeless here. Bishop takes e3, and it makes all the difference. So this is an interesting question. Does white have compensation here, or is black holding? It's an interesting theoretical question. If this king c7 was actually an inaccuracy, makes all the difference in this parallel universe. Let's have a look then. That's an unresolved question. I'll give the PGN in the description of the video, so those of you with supercomputers can analyse if this queen sack was sound or not. So in the game we saw king c7, and here it makes a lot of difference. So knight c3 in fact is liked by the engine, agrees with this idea. If the rook moves back, then isn't it a disaster with just bishop a7, or that's not the issue? Maybe it's not even the issue here. Maybe bishop a7 might even be bad. Yes. So the issue, it's not even that, it's to do with rook fb1 in this position. Very sharp position. Okay. And where can the queen go? The queen's kind of stuck here. With the queen here in this position, if the rook had moved back, if it offers herself, then now bishop a7 is very strong here. If she takes on b1, and just taking, and this is still very, very dangerous indeed. Bishop takes a7. Okay, so bishop takes a7 immediately for those interested here. Why wouldn't this work if the rook had just gone over? Bishop takes a7. There's bishop c5. Okay, and now attacking the queen. Does that not work? Okay, yes. Queen takes, and then bishop takes a7. Black's fine. So yeah, very important for accuracy in these alternative variations we're exploring here. So b takes c3. In the game we saw bishop c5, which has given us one of the very best moves that Vladimir played, to his credit. So white taking on d4, bishop takes d4, and now we see rook fb1. Queen using that c5 square. Rook a6. So even without the intention of rook c6, this has come up with as the strongest engine move. Now what is actually going on here? If black played bishop takes e3, okay, in this position rook c6 is actually the intention. Queen, so queen takes c6, bishop takes c6, and if the bishop moves, bishop d5, white's a bit better here apparently, can take on f7, that f pawn's dangerous. Any other alternative? King takes here, maybe we just queen the pawn and we're significantly better for white. Exchange up. So, and on c3, bishop e4, put the bishop on c5 for example, rook b5, white's still a little bit better. Maybe trying to get this c3 pawn now, or use the h pawn. These pawns are dangerous now. So okay, so rook a6 is actually now threatening after bishop e3, rook c6 check. Now after rook b8, then why isn't rook c6 used in this position? Well, I believe okay, let's, rather than what I believe, let's just check it out. Black can take, king takes, significantly different. b7 is dropping here. These are horrible passed pawns if that's taken. So with b7 dropping, this position should be okay for black. What's going on with these passed pawns though? Here that would be losing for white h5 because of taking in c3. So the king has to stop the c pawn. And okay, apparently white might be, it might be a draw here, or okay, because this pawn can be stopped with bishop f6. So black might actually even be better. So it's no good to use in this position rook c6 check. In this position here, rook c6 check is an inferior move now to what was played. So in this particular position, amazingly, Gata is playing really like Houdini. I don't know if this was masses of preparation with computers, but very, very position sensitive combination where you think the initial motive of the combination was rook c6, and now it's from one different sleight of defense from black. We have a different combinatory idea now emerging. For bishop a3 is threatening just to win the queen for a bishop. The queen hasn't got many squares here, so it seems one dynamic benefit of this advanced pawn, which we normally wouldn't consider in our thinking at all, is how the queen can also be trapped, because this bishop's got a fine range on the diagonal. So have this bishop on that fine range, the queen's actually run out of squares with the rooks bearing down all of these files. The queen's nearly run out of squares, and that retreat diagonal is being threatened with bishop a3. So here it seems, after this, black seems busted here. After this retreat, bishop c1, believe it or not, black seems busted. It's incredible. You know, to think a move like this, bishop c1. So it's a new benefit of an advanced passed pawn. So black tried c3. If he takes on f2, let's have a quick check on that. Hasn't the queen got, for example, d4 here, you might ask? Let's imagine queen d4 is played immediately. Bishop b2, protecting the back row. Taking on e5 is pretty devastating. So this is a target, this b8. But for the moment the rook moves, leaving b8 as a target. And if that rook has to sacrifice itself, then it's really going downhill. So that's another problem with this position. So taking here, it seems, doesn't help black at all. If king d7, bishop a3 again here, queen d4. Now in this position, what is going on here? Bishop f3, the strongest move, maybe to threaten rook d1. Isn't rook d6 good enough? No, again we'd have an equal position. So bishop f3. What's the advantage of losing? Well, this is just, rather than losing rook and bishop, just get the queen as cheaply as possible, really, with rook d1. I think that's the basic idea. So let's say e4, and now rook d1, it's going to be check, so it's still getting the queen cheaper. Or is it? Takes. Still two pieces there. But now, nope, one piece, check. Getting the bishop back. So, very interesting position where black seems to be without too many counter resources to this retreat bishop c1, and the obvious one doesn't seem to be that good either. Bishop takes f2 here. Incredibly. Bishop takes g3, violent. In this position, in this particular position, okay, it's dangerous because, you know, rook h8 checks are going to be made if take here. Let's go with bishop d6 check. But now the bishop is a victim here tactically. Otherwise taking on b8 of king d7. So white can afford to do this now. Just take on g3. So yeah, it seems difficult after bishop c1 for black to do anything. So we see c3 tried. Bishop a3. c3 at least gave the queen c4 in any case, but now bishop d6. White's doing fine, it seems now, even with just taking on b8. That's interesting as it leaves the rook hanging, but then, hang on, let's have a quick look at this. Bishop d6, threatening to queen. This is no good. White's just a rook up there. But even in this kind of position, let's just check c2. This fails because of check. And bishop f5. If nothing else, no, not bishop f5. Rook c8. Surely. No, bishop c5. That's queening. No, okay, let's be careful here. This position, rook d8 check. Wow, it's forcing the king on the c file because of this bishop. So that's crafty as well. There's ways and means to get advanced pawns. So even in this position, this c pawn seems a danger in some lines, like here, but apparently with the forcing moves available, it's not. With some magic, with bishop h3 check, it's not. So, okay. So even that was apparently possible, just to simply take on b8 here. But no, we see bishop c6 check. King e6. If the queen had just taken, takes. Again, we have a dangerous passed pawn on c3 here. How is this managed? In this position, just rook c7 apparently, and this should be okay. White's okay here. White's winning that. Okay, so in the game, okay, we see after check, we see king e6, and that's becoming much easier for white after king e6. In fact. After king takes d6, check would win the queen, and the other issue is the pawn. I think that's managed. Again, the pawn is managed here. If on e c2 there's rook c1 now. Okay, so it's not just a question about winning the queen. This pass pawn is now a major factor. but in the game it started to become easier now. Bishop b5, and White's material is increasing White's material advantage. White's got a huge material advantage, some token checks really, and here, around about here, no, it carried on for a bit. Rook b6, check. It was here that Vladimir finally resigned. An insanely complex game. I'm sorry if your brain's fried. I think mine is now, but it's an opening with a huge legacy of amazing games. This Botvinnik system, researched by Mikhail Botvinnik, 1945 radio match, was unleashed against poor Arnold Denker, and some amazing games ever since. Brilliant games in this line, very tactical line of the Slav defence. In fact, if there's one variation of the Slav which shows how dynamic and aggressive the Slav can be, it's probably this variation. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.